Unit 3, Lesson 3 deals with solving two-step equations. And once again, we look at our objective, and this word here is very important. Alright, while we want the right answer, more importantly, what we want to be able to do is show the work necessary to solve an equation. Okay, so it's important to be able to know how to show your work. Same 4 steps as before. Ask what's being done to the variable, do the inverse operation, do the same on the other side, and solve. Alright. Also, same warning that you had last time too. Whatever you do to one side of an equation, you must do the exact same thing to the other side. Hasn't changed, not going to change. You got to remember those rules are very important. Okay, so just like we did before, we're going to take a look at the first example and only do the first 2 steps just to make sure we know how to read an equation. Again, being able to read an equation is very important, being able to read it the right way. So when I look at this variable, again, what I'm asking myself is what is being done to that thing right there. And I'm going to go ahead and highlight the variable in all 4 of these problems. Okay? So we look and we always read closest and expand out to the equal sign. So when I look here, alright, 4 is the closest, so we would say we're multiplying by 4 and we are adding 6. So therefore that means the opposite of this would be to subtract 6 then divide by 4. Alright, let's take a look at B. Remember, it doesn't matter which side the variable is on. Okay, our eyes directly go to the variable first. We see that this is being multiplied by 2 and we're subtracting 5. So the opposite would be to add 5 and divide by 2. Take a look at C and D. Now C and D, you'll look at them and notice they look very similar. They both include division by 2. They both include a plus 7. They're both equal to negative 5. Okay, but how you read it is actually very different. Okay, in the first one, we always read fractions completely first. So I have a top part of a fraction, I have a bottom part of the fraction. So I'm going to read this first as x is being divided by 2. Then we're adding 7. So the opposite would be to subtract 7 and multiply by 2. In D, however, because this is a fraction, we always read the top first. This is x plus 7, so we're adding 7 first, then we are dividing by 2. So the reverse of that would be to multiply by 2 and subtract 7. Okay? These 2 problems people get mixed up a lot. And again, you need to remember when you deal with fractions, read the complete top, then the complete bottom. Okay? And we'll see examples as we go to solve in a second here. So let's go ahead and get to problems where we're actually going to do the work now. Okay? So example 2, now we're asked to solve the equations, and we want to make sure we show all of our work. Alright, don't forget to do that. So, looking at example 8. Again, I look at that variable right there and say, okay, we are multiplying by 3 and we're subtracting 5. Alright, so multiply by 3, subtract, not 5, 15. Alright, so the opposite would be to add 15. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. I end up over here, negative 15, positive 15 is 0. I have 3x equal to 27. Then, okay, so we took care of the subtraction. Now we're going to take care of that. Opposite of multiplication is division. We divide and we get 9. Okay, keep in mind, like we said before, it is very easy to check your answer. All you need to do is 3 times 9 minus 15. 3 times 9 is 27. Minus 15 is 12. 12 equals 12. I know I'm right. Checking your answer is something you should be doing. Alright, look at B. B, you'll notice the variable's on the right. So again, I read the right-hand side first, and I see that I am multiplying by 4 and adding 5. The last thing you say is always the first thing you get rid of. So I said adding 5, so I'm going to get rid of that first. Subtract 5 from both sides. Alright, these have the same sign. When you have the same sign, you're going to add and keep the sign. Over here, positive and negative 5 is 0, and that 4x has not changed yet. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and divide by 4. Divide by 4, and I get x equal to negative 5. Keep in mind when you're reading an equation, you always start with the variable. So even though that negative 5 is first, we like to say x equals negative 5. Again, I'm going to go ahead and test my answer. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. Plus 5 is negative 15. Negative 15 is negative 15. I know I'm right. All right. Looking at C. Just because there's a fraction doesn't change what's going on here right now. Okay, there's another way of solving it that we'll talk about, but right now when I read the problem, we're multiplying by a half, and we're subtracting 3. The last thing you say, first thing you get rid of. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Remember, the idea of both sides works like this. We have an equal sign. That cuts the problem in half. Even though there's more pieces over here than over here, they're both equal to each other, so they're the same. This is the left side, this is the right side. If I add 3 to the left side, I have to add 3 to the right. Alright, and what that does for me, on this side, I still have my half of x. Negative 3 and positive 3, that's gone. And on this side, I end up with negative 2. Okay, now, took care of that. The 1/2, there's 2 ways of doing this. You could divide by a half both ways, but what we like to do with fractions is multiply by reciprocals. Okay? Again, if you're using a calculator, go right ahead and divide by a half. It doesn't really matter. But it's usually better to show it like this. Make that a fraction. Alright? A 2 on top and a 2 on the bottom is going to cancel. And I'm left with my 1x, which is what I'm trying to do. And negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. Alright? Once again, I'm going to check my work. Half of 4 is 2. Don't forget it's negative. Minus 3 is negative 5. Negative 5 equals negative 5. I know I am right. Alright? If you did not write down these checks, right here, right here, right here, do it now because you're not getting credit for your homework if this is missing. You need to have the check on there or you are not getting credit for your homework. Moving on. Last set of examples here. Now we're dealing with this division thing that sometimes throws people off. Alright. Looking at number 1 here. Again, we're dividing. We read the fraction first because there are variables there. We're dividing by 8 and we're subtracting 12. So I'm going to add 12 to both sides. We end up with x over 8 is equal to, these are different signs, so I'm going to subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number, 8. Alright, once again, this is where a lot of people rush to say, oh, the answer is 1 because there's an 8 here and an 8 here. Alright, you got to go through the work. Don't rush. Alright, take your time. We're dividing by 8. The opposite of dividing by 8 is multiplying. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 8, and I actually end up with 64. Alright, again, I'm going to do my check. 64 divided by 8 is 8. 8 minus 12 is negative 4. Negative 4, negative 4 are equal, so we checked out. There's our answer. Remember, when checking your answer, always go back to the original problem. Alright, so that if you happen to make a mistake early on, you could catch that mistake. Okay, example B, same situation. Now here's something you could do. If you think you know how to do B, go ahead and pause the video, do it on your own, and then make sure you check your answer. Alright, so your work should look like this. We're going to subtract 4 from both sides. Positive 4 and negative 4 is 0. So I have x over 4. On this side, positive and negative 4 is also 0, but I need to write it this time. You can never leave half of an equation blank. Alright, and then we multiply by this, both sides. Multiplying by 4, dividing by 4 cancels out, and I get x equal to 0 times anything is 0, x equals 0. I'm going to check my answer. 0 divided by 4 is 0, plus 4 is 4. Alright, there you go. Okay, now C. This is something we saw in a previous video. These double sign problems are always an issue. So what I would tell you to do is rewrite it or correct that problem before you begin. Minus the negative is really just a plus. Alright, so now we go ahead and do our solving. Oh, there's a typo in there. No, I'm sorry, there wasn't a typo. This is the parenthesis I covered up. Alright, so looking here, well, no, I'll just go ahead and rewrite it. You can tell we're adding 12, so that's no big deal. Let's go ahead and subtract that 12. Same sign over here. I'm going to add them and keep the sign. Now on this one, that negative sign, it doesn't really matter if you put it on top, bottom, out in front. All right, use it how you need it. And we got to get rid of it either way. So instead of saying I'm dividing by 7, I'm going to give that negative to the 7 and say we're dividing by negative 7. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 7. All right, because I want the number to stay the same. I want the operation to change. Negative times a negative is a positive. Multiplying by 7 and dividing by 7 is the opposite, so they cancel out. And I have x by itself now. Over here, a negative times a negative is a positive. All right, that's going to be 112. All right. Last one. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and check that one. All right. Plugging it in. 112 divided by 7. You may, again, you can use your calculator, or you might have to do this. All right, we go in there once. That's 7. Subtract. That's 4 over 2. There's your 16 that we just had anyways. So I have negative 16 plus 12, which was originally a minus negative. There's your negative 4. It checks. All right, last problem. Once again, being able to read D is important. All right, this is read as x plus 7 divided by 2. The last thing I said was divided by 2, so it's going to be the first thing I get rid of. All right, multiplying by 2 and dividing by 2 are opposites, so they cancel out. I have x plus 7 equal negative 10. Subtract my 7 from both sides. X equals negative 17. All right, and of course we got to go ahead and check it. Negative 17 plus 7, that's going to be negative 10 over 2, which is negative 5. And I just verified it. It works. There is my answer. All right. See you tomorrow in class. Make sure you have all this written down. All right. Don't skip any steps.